Should we get? You know what? We got to do a little bit of Opie. We've been teasing this forever. These clips aren't going to last that long if we don't get through these pretty quickly here. This is Opie commenting on the Nopie shows. April, I don't know if you know much about the Nopie shows.
I only know that it's basically old O&A shows where they've clipped out Opie, right?
And that's funny, isn't it?
There's no Opie, get it? Nopie.
Right, it's funny.
It is funny.
Funny concept. And also, I've listened to a couple of those Nopie shows. They're really good, and you don't really miss much.
You don't notice it.
It's kind of one of the things that turned me, because for a while there, I would defend Opie, like, look, he's the radio guy who keeps things moving and everything else. But then I listened to a couple of those Nopie shows, and I went, well, shit, like a Sam Roberts or somebody like that could do this job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, introduce topics, then let the funny people go. That was basically Opie's job anyway.
Yeah.
And Opie sometimes would want to interject himself into it, and he'd go, let's take a call. And it's like, no, Colin Quinn is going on a great rant right now, and you want to take a phone call? What are you doing?
Don't stop him.
So somebody cut out Opie's shit. This is years ago they did this. And somebody asked Opie about it while he was doing his Cheers in the Morning podcast. And this was Opie's reaction to it.
Just my opinion. I don't know what the Nopie shows aren't as good as when all three were there. Why would I care about the Nopie shows?
Why? You have to choose to read the comment.
I don't like... I think there are some things I want banned from the English language sometime, and I want like the statement "I don't care" removed, because no matter what like situation you're saying it in, it's not helpful.
You can't bring something up voluntarily for you to talk about and then turn around and say you don't care about it. That's not how not caring works.
Correct.
Not caring means you don't bring it up in the first place.
It's very much a nothing statement. I actually want it removed from everyone's like diction.
Here's how Opie treats the Opie and Anthony show. He treats it like his ex-girlfriend that he's hoping someone will bring up so he can talk shit about her.
Okay.
You can't say, I don't care about my ex-girlfriend. I don't give a shit when you sit there going, oh, if someone brings her up, I'm going to say this about her. You know, I don't
rage.
I don't give a fuck about her. She's stupid and she's a slut and she's a whore. Everything after I don't care is the truth, and everything before I don't care is a lie.
Yeah.
If you
that makes sense.
If you go, I don't care, they're this, that, and the other thing. Well, then you care.
Yeah, if you've got examples of how you don't care, I think you care a little.
Ready? Here's a good example of how to use I don't care. If someone goes, hey, man, are you going to that thing next weekend? I don't really care about it, so probably not.
You know when I use
But there, you didn't say anything after. You just went, I don't really care about it. I'm probably not going to go. Boom. Then you don't care.
You know when I use I don't care? Like if you were to say like, oh, you know, our friend Donnie's coming over or something. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't care. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, sure.
When you have a level of fame, you know, it is fucked up what people will attempt to do. It is weird.
Okay, but at the same time, if you're at that level of fame, you can't let that shit affect you. We talked about this with Tom Segura yesterday. Tom Segura's flipping out because someone said something that bothered him, and now he's projecting and turning it around on his audience like they're a problem. Opie's the same way. Opie's like, when you get really famous, people do a lot of fucked up shit about you. Don't look at it. You're famous. The whole trade-off of being famous is you don't have to give a shit what people who don't like you think.
Dude, we're not famous. The amount of like nasty shit that's out there is ridiculous.
And I can say with 100% certainty, with 100% honesty, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. People are allowed to do that shit. It's fine.
There's a guy out there that's so obsessed with me and hates me so much that he's painstakingly taking my entire voice out of old Opie and Anthony shows. And I'm supposed to be bothered by this, I guess.
But you are. If you're bringing it up and you're talking about the guy, like, there's this fucking hater and he takes my voice out of the shows and I'm supposed to care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't bring it up. This isn't heavy level master's degree level psychology. This is third grade shit.
Obvious. And like, he painstakingly, you know.
That
was a huge part of that.
It's not painstakingly. He's just going through.
Edit.
Yeah, he's just going through and highlighting and deleting. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I find it incredibly creepy that someone's spending that much time. I'm Opie from Opie and Anthony, and I spend literally no time on Opie and Anthony. I mean, it's like zero.
Anybody want to yell bullshit before I do?
I'm a little exhausted of yelling it. Your turn.
Bullshit. You spend zero time. Opie, if you release an Opie and Anthony video, you ranting and raving about how much Anthony sucks and Jim Norton's an asshole or Sam's a dick or anything else, it gets more views than anything you put out the rest of the month combined. So you can't say, I spend 0 time on Opie and Anthony. That's like Maury Povich doesn't even need to open the envelope for that one.
No.
You just go, Opie, I heard you say that, and I determined that that was a lie.
I would like to get Maury in on some of these, though.
Oh,
Just for the fun.
he's too old. You'd kill the poor guy from the stupidity.
Ooh, how old is he now?
Probably in his 70s.
Boy,
But man.
do you think his job takes any like toll on his body, or do you think it's just fun? Like, I feel like it'd be a little scary wondering how people are going to react sometimes, but I think that's where it stops.
Yeah. Well, Opie, so Opie says he's doesn't mind the Opie shows. He doesn't care. It doesn't bother him. But then he went on to talk about it at length and how this knows everything that the guy does. That's the Zumach thing we always talk about. And I know Opie doesn't like Chad. He had to clarify that. And he thinks that Chad's a fucking idiot. But you guys are very much alike in that Opie will go, I don't care. Well, if you don't care, you're not allowed to know what the guy's doing.
No.
You know?
What are you talking about? Who's that guy?
Yeah. You don't get to go, I don't care, and then go, well, here's what the guy does. He takes the files, he loads them in a file player. He goes through the files, he clips out all the audio and video that has me on it talking. And I got so famous that this guy decided to do that, and it's really stupid, and it's creepy, and I don't care. I don't ever spend any time on Opie and Anthony, but you do. You spend a good amount of your time.
I want people like him to like get it tattooed on his forehead. Like, no, I actually don't care.
I actually don't care.
Just to remind everyone.
This one is a lot of fun. It's no issues with Bill Burr, but Joe Rogan, ...
Can we get a comma?
Are you ready for some Opie? No issues with Bill Burr, which I'm sure when Bill Burr saw this, he went, oh, thank God I don't have Opie coming after me.
I think he probably did.
That is,
I don't know how he could pull off one of his specials. If he knew that Opie had a problem.
I wouldn't have been able to perform at Red Rock if I knew Opie had some heat with me. I don't want heat with the Opester.
No thanks.
But now Joe Rogan, about to be put on notice.
I don't see it that way. I don't see that at all. At all. And I'm a weird dude because...
Fair. All right. We agree. That part's correct.
Bill Burr would do my podcast tomorrow.
What? I don't think Bill Burr needs to do your podcast.
Bill Burr would do my podcast. Let me again. I love the stupidity of Greg Opie Hughes. Bill Burr would do my podcast tomorrow. But, I don't want to ask him because, I'm too busy and I got a lot of shit going on. And I don't need like a Bill Burr on my YouTube channel to help it break its stagnance.
Dude, I think we could do like to turn this whole ship around if we got Bill Burr on here. Maybe.
Yeah, right. I could get Bill Burr. Bill Burr would do my podcast in a heartbeat. Do you ever think of calling him, sending him a text? Opie, again, very Zumakian also. This is another quality these types of people carry. They don't want to put too much effort into what they're doing because then if it fails, they have to admit that they failed.
Exactly.
So if they suck and people think they suck, they can go, well, I'm not really trying.
I'll try harder next time.
I mean, I'm not really trying. So if I suck, it's because I'm really not putting any effort into it. Bill Burr, I could have Bill Burr on my show tomorrow. He would come on this podcast. It's like, Opie, let me ask you a serious question. Would you even know how to run the software that you would need to run to get him video-wise up on your stream? I'm serious.
No.
Would you know how to do that? You're running this off a phone, for Christ's sake. So you don't know.
He wouldn't.
Also, it's like, when Omar tells Tony, when he says, I could have gotten someone to hit Rebenga cheaper, $50. And Tony goes, then why didn't you, man? That's how I feel about Chad Nopie. Like, I could lean in and I could try. Then why don't you?
Come on.
And I'll tell you why you don't. Because you wouldn't grab an audience. It would kill you inside. And it would reveal to you that the reason you're irrelevant is not because you don't want to be relevant, but because the ship has sailed.
Yes.
It's past you. The moment's passed you by and nobody gives a shit.
It's over.
It's over. 100%. So don't give me this Bill Burr would come on tomorrow horseshit because A, he probably wouldn't. He's remarkably busy. He's turning down people 100 times bigger than Greg Opie. Huge.
Oh, look, if he did come on Opie's show, I would retract.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely.
Big time respect.
I always talk shit about these guys, and I always end up going, make me look like a dick. I put myself out on so many treacherous limbs, and I go, make me look like an asshole. The reason I do it is because it may look like a treacherous limb, but I know it's very solid because these guys aren't going to make that move because it would crush Opie to put in effort and still fail.
But I don't really have like a professional setup these days. I'm wandering the streets.
I'm not trying.
I turn it on here from my apartment, 500 feet above
Gotta get that
the streets of New York. I do have a professional mic, so when I put this together as a podcast, the audio is way better than what you hear.
This is good audio.
I'll get a mic in 2023. But Bill Burr has always been a solid dude. Solid. He's never, the guy has never said no to me.
Take a sip.
If I text him, he texts me back.
Text him.
If I call him on the phone, he picks up every single time.
All right.
I have literally no issues with Bill Burr. And I know if I said, hey, Bill, could you do my podcast next time you're in New York? He would do it in a second. I know that.
Well, then do it.
Yeah, do it sometime. I think that'd be entertaining.
Come on, let's have Bill Burr on the podcast. That'll be big numbers for the Opester.
So I would have to strongly disagree with this guy right here. Strongly disagree. Then there's other guys, and I don't really feel like naming names today. But all of a sudden I'll text somebody, and they don't even text back. I'm like, really, dude? Are you serious?
You and I talked about this before. This guy doesn't realize that most of these people were not his friends.
Correct. Yep.
Opie had a big radio show.
Mm-hmm.
These people wanted to be on it to promote their careers. When Opie lost his big radio show and didn't have an audience anymore, they said, well, got to move on to the next thing that can provide me a platform.
This sounds like somebody in your personal life that called you to tell you were never friends anymore.
Right. They're just like, you lose the big, you lose the big thing, and then you go, oh, well, I can't believe these people weren't my friends.
Yeah.
Look, that should have been something that goes with the territory.
It's self-serving for most people.
Say what you want about Howard Stern, but he doesn't think all these people who come onto his show are like his best buds who are just going to chat him up on the phone at night when he's alone by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, God. When you're dealing with egos, it's exhausting.
Projecting.
It's exhausting getting through one of his videos sometimes.
You know, Opie, I know that dealing with egos and all that is exhausting. I've listened to all the people who used to work with you, and boy, do they say some wild shit.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been bad working with you. Take that big swig of coffee.
It's exhausting. Rogan is like, you could love Rogan all you want. I think he's a piece of shit.
Why?
What?
Because he won't invite you?
He's got the biggest podcast in the world. He may be surpassing Howard Stern in terms of the biggest show that ever existed.
He'll get there.
But he won't return Opie's phone calls. Listen to the self-serving, single-serving, one-way relationships this leech has. This fucking leech who sucks onto people to gain relevance, and then when they don't return his calls anymore, Rogan's a piece of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Why? Rogan's never said a mean thing about you. Rogan's never said anything bad about you. Rogan's had you on his show before. But what, you get lonely in the middle of the night and I need a friend and Doggy won't come by me? I'll call Joe Rogan. Rogan didn't answer the phone. He's a piece of shit. He abandoned me just because I don't have a show.
Don't call the people that aren't your friends. It hurts less.
Still goes to UFC fights with Anthony.
Yeah.
Still hangs out with people who hang out with Anthony. I mean...
Maybe it's you.
Thank you. Maybe.
There's a chance.
You weren't even an Opie and Anthony listener. You've been watching this guy for a couple months, and even April Ope can understand. You think this might be you? I mean, the rest of us know.
There's a chance.
For real. Because, there was a time Rogan's podcast wasn't huge, and we put him all over our channel. He was on our channel on the weekends. He was coming in. He was great on our show. I really loved him on our show, and he.
Please tell me he's not about to take credit for Joe Rogan's podcast's success.
You know he's about to say we put him on. Like, we led people onto him.
Joe Rogan having Alex Jones on one time is bigger for his podcast than anything you ever did for him. Joe Rogan having Neil deGrasse Tyson on, all the great guests he has on, is bigger for him than anything you might have done for him, Ope. And by the way, anytime he was on the Opie and Anthony show, he killed. So he gave as good as he got.
He absolutely delivered. And we gave him massive promotion. And then, I got kicked to the curb and I had to start all over. And I started texting people to be on my podcast, especially in the early days when I was still going for guests and stuff. And honestly, more people than not said yes, and they were on the podcast. If you go all the way back in my podcast feed, you can see this for yourself. And then I just texted Rogan because he was in New York. And the guy literally did not get back to me. And then I called him out on it. And then I guess he said that he changed his number and stuff like that. I'm like, Joe.
That's fair, Opie. The guy has a new phone. You didn't have his number. And by the way, I called it 3 minutes ago. Oh, back when I was trying. Mm-hmm. When I had my podcast, I was actually trying. Now, Opie, when you had your podcast, you actually tried. Westwood One still cut you loose because nobody was listening to it. So then you fell into this and you went, well, I'm not going to try because that way I don't have to be exposed.
You can't fail if you don't shoot the shots.
Exactly. So he had this thing during Opie and Anthony that Anthony's not the star because everyone would say Anthony's the funny one, Jimmy's the funny one, this and that. And it built up a resentment in him. And then what happened was he got his chance to do it when Anthony got fired. And he can say whatever he wants. He was happy Anthony got fired. He was glad to see him go because now finally I'm going to shine. And he made
said it before.
Yeah, and he made it, a couple of years with Jim. Jim hated his guts and said, get this fucking idiot off the air. We're doing a terrible show together. So then he got his own afternoon show, and it went nowhere. It was nothing. And Sirius, at the first sign of a problem, Sirius went, get the fuck out of here. Then he did a podcast. It lasted maybe a year, and that shit the bed. So this guy he's got two choices. He can either rage at the world or he can admit, hey, I had a good run. You know what Opie's take should be? I went a lot farther than I ever had any business going with the lack of talent that I have.
Sure.
I should have been.
But he should be thankful.
An afternoon disc jockey or maybe a member of a morning zoo somewhere in Buffalo, New York, maybe too big of a market for him. But that was your talent level. You found two really funny guys, and they rode you to the top. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good career.
But you also know that I also DM'd you on the Twitter. And look, if he didn't want to do my podcast, that's one thing. But to completely ignore me, knowing what I did for him in the early days, that's a sign of a bad person. If you want.
No, let me tell you what the sign of a bad person is. Your relationships with people being transactional, meaning,
keeping score.
Yeah, you did our old show and we promoted you a lot. You fucking owe me. You owe me. You have to come on my podcast or you're a piece of shit in my book. No, that's a bad person, Ope. A bad person is someone who goes, hey, remember 15 years ago when I had you on my radio show and now you're the biggest thing in the world because you're really good at it? If you don't return my messages, then you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, the keeping score thing's not a good look.
Yeah, that's a bad person. Again, the lack of self-awareness in guys like this is alarming. I DM'd you on the Twitter. I text you. You sound like a bitch. You do. You sound like a heartbroken little bitch who's now bitter at a guy because he didn't go out with you. And to say that, like, Rogan didn't return my message, he's busy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I've DM'd plenty of people to try and get them on the show and stuff. Like, I don't throw a fit after they don't get back to me. I can assume these people have got plenty going on.
Anthony and I have DM'd twice. And to talk about, he complimented our show, and then another one I asked him about, or no, he asked about who got Opie to go off that one time, and I said, here's the link, that was me. Mm-hmm. And he would compliment our show and whatever. I would always end the conversation with, would you like to come on our show sometime? A spot's always open. He's never gotten back to me on that to set up a date. And guess what? That's fine. He's a busy guy. He doesn't owe me an appearance on this podcast. If he does ever come on, I'd be fucking honored to have him on the program. But you can't have someone deny you a spot on your podcast and then feel so entitled to it that now they're a piece of shit because they wouldn't respond to you. Especially when they're Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he doesn't need to pick up everything and head to New York, I don't think.
You want to know the truth. So if you want If you want to support Rogan and you think he's great, I have no problem with that. But I have to tell the truth about it.
It's not the truth,
And then
Opie. You're
I
delusional.
effed up the whole thing because I made a video on the streets of New York and I was twirling around because I was kind of trying to like.
Who does that sound like? He's on the streets of New York, losing his mind, spinning in circles. Oh, boy, you guys are twins.
Get the sun out of my face and this and that. And then it was a little artsy. And then everyone made fun of my street video, which is fine. But the fact is, man, you know, I needed some of these guys early on. And a lot of these guys understood that, and they did my podcast, including Bill Burr, including Stephen Lynch, who literally doesn't do much of anything. But he came to New York. I go, hey, man, you want to be on my podcast? He goes, sure. And he thanked me for everything I did for him over the years. Bill Burr came on.
Yeah.
You said that.
To quote George Carlin, yeah, didn't help. Still failed.
Honestly, Bob Saget, the list goes on and on. On and on, and you can see all the names if you.
Why do you sound so bitchy about it?
He's very bitter and angry.
Rogan
very
couldn't
bitter.
even write me back. That's when I turned on that guy. I'm like, oh, okay.
It wasn't a hostile thing he did to you, Opie. He was busy, and your podcast didn't fit in his schedule. He had bigger shows to do. He probably did Legion of Skanks. He probably did a bunch of New York podcasts I've never heard of that are bigger than you. I don't even think he went on Compound when he came to New York. You don't hear Anthony bitching about it. And then they go to UFC fights together. So
well, I guarantee you now he's never going to answer you.
Right, but then but Opie doesn't understand what he does wrong. So now the next time Rogan doesn't answer, he's going to go, oh, he's still a piece of shit because he didn't answer me this. Why would he answer you now? Take a big chug.
At least fake it, like some of your brothers out there. At least they know how to fake it.
Wow.
God, you're
He
an
said
asshole.
you didn't have his number.
I don't even like
just
listening to this guy
explained.
anymore.
I had a number that I believe to this day still works, and I also DM'd him on the Twitter. He was surprised that I called him.
You know what's nice? I bet you Joe Rogan doesn't have a lot of Twitter DMs.
Never. I bet that guy doesn't even have shit turned on to get them.
He probably
unless
doesn't
they're a
even
certain caliber on there.
He doesn't control his Twitter, I'm sure.
You're right. He's probably too big for that.
But I love in Opie's mind, if he believes that number still works, it doesn't matter how many people tell him it doesn't. He believes it. So now Joe Rogan's a piece of shit.
Out, and then he had to come up with something. Because a lot of these guys, you know, this crap happens to them, and then they just keep their mouths shut and don't say anything. But I'm like, fuck that. I'm going to say something.
By the way, Opie's not bitter, and he doesn't care. He's not.
He's everything I don't enjoy.
He's not bitter, and he doesn't care. But alas,
like he's the
this.
epitome of a headache to me. Like I just can't stand him.
Because he's one of those people who you could scream it right in his face what's going on, and it wouldn't register.
He sits there for a second. He's like, "No, this is actually what's going on here."
Oh well, we are well over, and we got to get some
hungry.
Opester time in. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very